Hello guys, welcome to my channel again. Thank you for your time. So this channel is Indian Polity. So I have already told in the other class that Indian polity, the knowledge about Indian polity is inevitable for any Indian citizen. It's not only for UPSC aspirants, it's not only for law students, it's for all Indian citizens. We should know how the government works, how the Indian polity works. So we will giving focus on UPSC areas for mains, prelims, etc, etc. From this class you will learn a lot. So please subscribe this channel. Please subscribe, share and like and comment on this channel, please. Okay, so today's agenda is understanding the forms of government, classification based on power division, unitary, what is the difference between unitary and federal government, and and parliamentary, what is the difference between parliamentary and presidential systems, and advantages and disadvantages of each system. This is what we are trying to cover in this small section. Okay, please be with me. We will try to cover these areas as quick as possible, not getting into boredom. We will try to finish it as quickly as possible so that you could cover a lot of ground in a small period of time. That's what our aim is. Okay, thank you for your time. So the term government comes from the term govern, which stands for to rule, guide, govern and direct. On the basis of various meanings, it can be said that the term government represents a form of system which exercises control over a society through law and order. At the same time, it can be a way of exercising power. So from this word itself means to govern. Somebody is governing us, and somebody is exercising control over the society through some law and order. I told you about the definition of constitution. It's about set of laws and orders. So who does constitution is a law and order, it's a written one. So who implements it or who exercises control over a society through a constitution, that is called a government. A government uses the constitution to rule over the society. The government uses set of rules and laws and amendments to govern the land. So it uses the law of the land to control and rule the society. That is very important. At the same time, it can be a way of exercising power, certain power we need to, for example, the law and order of a country, the defense of a country, the common civil laws like marriage laws of a country, the divorce laws of a country, how the traffic rules should be controlled. These all things are governed by set of laws and statutes which are written, something in constitution, something by new laws. So constitution is the basic law of the land, and we add new laws by the legislative assemblies of the central and the state government. So the term government comes from the word govern, which stands for to rule, guide, govern or direct on basis of various meanings, not only in terms of defense, not only in terms of law and order, not only in terms of public administration, not only in terms of health, not only in terms of transport, not only in terms of civil society, not only in terms of cleanliness. Whatever a society is at large, the government is responsible for most of the things. Otherwise, if there is no government, there is a rogue state. Anyone can do anything. There is no law. There is there is nothing, no one to govern you, and you can do whatever you want. You are not under any constitution. You are not under any government. So that is a lawless land. That's a rogue state. Now coming to classification of based on division of power. So based on division of power, we divide the governments into unitary government and federal government. Okay, so we will come to what is a unitary government and we will come to what is a federal government. Okay, so according to this chart, you can understand unitary system is a national government where there is only one set of government at the center, and that is called the national government, and they rule the states. There is no separate government at the states. But in a federation where we have a national government as well as a state government, and another concept is also there, which is a confederation where states are there, but authority is more concentrated in the states, and also there is a national government to control overall scenarios. These three are the three basic basic differences between unitary, federation, and confederation. Confederation and federation are almost similar, but the basic difference here is between the unitary system and the federation or the federal government. Okay. So coming to the unitary government, what is a unitary government? Unitary government is where a central government, where the authority, full authority of the land, everything. There is no separate power for any other state governments. So it's like the British government. The basic example is British government or the French government or the Japanese government, where they don't have provincial governments, they don't have state governments, they don't have district authorities to govern and rule. But in unitary government setup, the central government has the whole power to govern the land. Okay. And there are small sub-national governments. They give the authority, the power is centralized, totally centralized. That is the unitary government. Okay. Unitary government is most common form of government. A model unitary government is one in which all governing power, including sovereign power, exist in a single government over the entire nations. Example: France, China, Japan, and Britain. Okay, these are the governments where we have unitary government. Then we have something. What are the advantages of having a unitary government? The biggest advantage to have in a unitary government is the spirit of nationalism, which has been dominant element in the United States, where there is spirit of nationalism where the centralized power which will pull things towards them. So the making authority over other people are very easy, and the sense of one, because there are no other separate governments in the federal system, like there is no separate chief minister in the state, there is no separate ministers in the state, there is no tug of war between the federal government as well as the state government. State government means those who are ruling the provinces or the small subsections of the country. So there is no tussle. So there is only one thinking of national interest in a unitary government. And the second is centralized power, and third is decision making is very easy, because we don't have to talk too much, we don't want negotiations, we can take decision according to our wishes and our own personal agendas. So that is one advantage. Maybe it is a disadvantage of having a unitary government. And for this bureaucratic process is less complex. I already told you there are no two governments. So what happens is decision making and file process are very easy, because only at the central, for example in Delhi and in Kerala, if in Kerala or in Tamil Nadu or Karnataka or Delhi or Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, if there are no governments in all these states, everything is taken by people in New Delhi, then the bureaucratic process become very easy. Decision making, we don't have to consult the states regarding any laws. Okay, they can take any arbitrary decisions. It can be an advantage as well. I will tell about the disadvantage later. The bureaucratic process is less complex. Election process is very easy. There is no separate conduction of elections like in the Bihar election, like or Uttar Pradesh election or Kerala election, or no election separately conducted in the different states. Only election is to the federal government. Okay, central government, so not federal, central government. So coming to the biggest disadvantage of unitary government is the centralization of power. Every power is vested in some very few people, and they will exercise maximum power without consultation with any people. That is one of the biggest disadvantage of having a unitary government. You should not confuse between unitary and federal. So Having said that, there are certain advantages too. I've already told you about that. Okay, now coming to, in a country like India, talking about this. In a country like India, where the grassroots realities are different, government should be ruling according to the needs of the people. So there can't be always centralized decision making. Am I right? We cannot do that. If we are doing centralized decision making, what will happen is we cannot understand the ground level realities of what is happening on the ground. So government should be ruling according to the real needs of people. So every state will have different needs. Am I right? For example, the needs of Tamil Nadu will not be same as the needs of Kerala. The needs of Uttar Pradesh will not be same as the UP, the needs of Delhi. The needs of Himachal Pradesh will not be the same as the needs of Jammu and Kashmir. So there is a disconnect between the ground realities and the central government if unitary government is functioning in a unitary fashion without consultation with the states. That is the biggest disadvantage of having a unitary government. For a country like India, we cannot have. That is why the constitution makers, the founding fathers of our nation, insisted for having a federal government where we had lot of provincial states during independence. Like Kerala was a provincial state, Madras state was there, Kannadiga, that particular state was there, the Bombay presidency was there. So lot of provincial states. So include them to have some authority to these provincial people. There should be a consensus to rule over the land. So the constitution makers made it very clear the best system of government that can work in India is none other than federal government. No, federal government, not unitary system. So I already told power rests with very few people. Tendency toward dictatorship will also be there. That's what is happening in some countries like Russia, China, and North Korea. Okay, federal government. Now we will talk about. Till now we are talking about unitary government. Now we will talk about federal government. Federalism is a form of government where the powers are distributed between central and provincial governments, and both have their separate and well defined areas of authority. So that is, India is, I could say India is a quasi federal state, not completely federal. Yes, it's quasi federal, I would say. That is the best word which is used for our country, that is quasi federal. So federalism is a form of government where the powers are distributed between the central and that is why we have concurrent list. We will talk about the concurrent list later when we take about more sections of the constitution. Now we will talk more about what is federalism and what is the distribution of powers between the federal. For example, New Delhi we have a government, central government, BJP is ruling it. In Kerala we have a communist government ruling. In Tamil Nadu we have a DMK government. In Karnataka we have a Congress government. In Telugu Desam party is there. So Maharashtra we have BJP. So likewise, in a state there is a government and also there is a central government in a federal system. Okay. What are the features of federal government? Features of federal government are delegation and distribution of power. I have already told you there is no single authority owning all the powers. Certain laws can be made by the central government. Certain laws cannot be made by the central government. Certain laws can be made by the state government. Certain laws cannot be made by the state government. Certain laws can be made by both central and the state governments. So it is, this power is distributed between the central and the state. And second is there is a need of written and rigid constitution. And third is there should be independence of judiciary. For there will always tussle between the three important sections of the government. For example, the central government we have legislative, executive, and judiciary. So there should be an independent judiciary. I will always say the most cardinal element which is necessary for a functioning democracy is nothing but a separate and independent judiciary. Without an independent judiciary, if all the members of judicial service are not independent, no democracy can exist. The most vital thing in any democracy is a functioning, independent judiciary which could give orders based on law, not based on politics. Okay, and there is a dual administration and a bicameral legislature. Bicameral legislature. We will come into all these. What is dual administration? What is bicameral legislature in the coming sections? Okay, so in a federal government, one concept we can use equality to all units. For example, if we have in a country we have 51 states, all the 51 states have equal amount of power in a federal system. Okay, that is one important. So what is the best example for a federal government? India is quasi-federal. United States is federal government. So what are the best examples of unitary government? Britain, France, and Japan. So for UPSC exam, they are asking among these, pick out the one country which is not federal or not unitary. You can easily answer that question if you have attended this class. Okay. Now coming to the advantages and disadvantages of having unitary and federal government. Laws may be applied uniformly to all throughout the country in a unitary government, where laws may be made to suit individual needs of the states. Local needs, that's called local aspirations, take into consideration. Government efforts seldom duplicate or contradict themselves, because unitary government, they don't have two governments. Every actions and inactions are taken by the single central government, so there is no one to contradict. But tyranny can be avoided more easily in a federal government, where we have more consultative government or more democratic system, where we have to consult with each other, central government, state government, etc. Decision making is fast and efficient in unitary government. Government is more closer to people, like the Panchayati Raj system in India, where the grassroots level democracy has been attained by the greatest law of the country, that is a Panchayati Raj, where the grassroots level people are given the power to rule this nation. So comparative disadvantages is unitary government are concentration of power that can lead to tyranny. I've already told you, there's always the tendency to be the ultimate powerful man of all the land. That is unitary. In the unitary, that is there. And distribution of power may lead to conflict between states, and there is a biggest disadvantage of the federal government, because we have two sets of government in a single country. There is always a friction, or there is always a fight going between center and state. There is always a fight going between decision making. So there is a big disadvantage of the federal government. And unity and integrity. If the country is large, a distant central government can lose control. That is also there, because they lose connect with the common people, so they can lose control if it's the unitary government. It's a huge country like India, and the country has a tendency to split apart. Tendency of regionalism may also grow. That is another disadvantage of having, federal government, where the country has a tendency to split apart, and of regionalism may happen, like the Khalistan issue which is happening there, and the Jammu and Kashmir. They have all different historical underpinnings. I'm not going into it right now. We can talk about it another time. I'm also trying to start a Hindu editorial discussion session. Try to do it on a regular basis, but I have a limited amount of time, so I'll try to do it. Okay. And the local needs and resources. Central officials may not always understand the needs of their citizens. That is there. Sub-governments may lack resources that the central government has. So that is a problem. The small governments in the states, smaller states, they don't have the fund to implement lot of public programs. So that is the now we could understand. So in the UPSC for prelims and mains, they can ask for what are the comparative advantages, comment on it in the mains, and also for the UPSC prelims they can give you a number of options. Among this, exclude the feature of a federal government, exclude what are the features of a unitary government, what are the features of a federal government, what are the comparative advantages. These all questions can be asked in the UPSC prelims and also in the mains. So classification based on legislative, executive. Now we are going to, till now we were discussing about the different sets of government based on power, distribution of power. Now we are going to divide the governments all over the world based on two important systems, that is based on legislative and executive relationship. I've already told you the three important, there are four pillars of democracy. Fourth one is you already know, that's that's the press. And the first pillar of the democracy is legislative, the executive, the judiciary, and the press. So the three pillars I've already told you. So now we are going to divide the governments based on the relationship between the parliament, the executive, as well as the legislative. So based on this, the relationship between executive and legislative, we have two sets of government. One is parliamentary form of government, second is presidential form of government. So what are the features of parliamentary forms of government? Parliamentary forms of government have a responsible government, or we have a cabinet like in India where the council of ministers are responsible to the upper house, and also they are responsible, they have a confidence to run the government only when they have they have this they have the they are responsible to the upper, they are always answerable to questions of the upper house, as well as they are at the will of the president. The president, they are at the will and the mercy, no, not say the word mercy, they are the will of the president. This is a responsible government. They cannot do whatever they want according to their whims and fancies. They are responsible. The cabinet, there is a council of ministers, there is a prime minister, they are all responsible to the upper house and the parliament. So there is a sense of collective responsibility. The whole council of ministers, they have every action and inactions, they have a collective, they are all answerable to that. The government is answerable to that. They cannot say, okay, we are not doing that, I am not answerable to this, he is not, and the parliamentary system is a collective one. It is governed, the whole country is governed by the collective cabinet, collective government. So this collective concept of collective responsibility is always there. There is no single person running the government, running the show. The prime minister along with the council of ministers collectively runs the government. So the sense of collective responsibility is there. There are two executive. One is the nominal head, that is the president. Second is the head of the council, the cabinet, or the real head of the government, that is the prime minister. There is a nominal head, that is the president. He is the he is regarded as the real head of the state. But there's also prime minister, who is the head of the council of the cabinet, who runs the government on a daily basis. So the two executive heads are always there in a parliamentary form of government. The leadership of the head of the government is there, that is the leadership is done by the prime minister. Then also the other concept, fusion of executive and legislature. There's a fusion is there. There is no clear-cut demarcation between who is the executive and who is legislature. They can overlap at sometimes. The council of ministers can also be the lawmaking body. They are also the executive who are executing the laws on the land. So there is no absence of there is absence of fixed terms because the council of ministers are at power only till they have the confidence in the upper house. If they lose the vote of confidence, vote of the non-confidence, or the motion of vote of non-confidence, if they lose the majority in the upper house, they lose the term. So there is no fixed term. Yes, they say that Lok Sabha has 5 years only when they have the confidence, or they have the majority in the upper house. Now, what are the advantages of parliamentary system of government? The advantages of parliamentary system because of the fusion of powers, members of the legislature are more cooperative, because most of the lawmakers are also the part of the executive. So there is some incorporate. They can be a cooperation to how the laws can be executed, because the lawmaking body is the executive body also in some places. So in that scenario, there can be some cooperation. The government is more responsible and accountable in that ministers are individually responsible to the legislature and the activities and of their respective departments, and an incumbent government, particularly on coalition one, can remain in office only as it enjoys the support of the legislature. So the executive government, if they do some, they can only be governing the land only if they have the support of the legislature. That is very important. If the legislature is not supporting, if they lose the confidence in the upper house, they cannot rule. That is because this is responsible government. They're always responsible to the upper house or the parliament. It's okay. Because of the members of the executive are themselves the members of legislature, there is a strong government and effective policy making, in the sense that legislative proposals that an incumbent government introduces in the legislature are easily passed into law by the, because there is no clear-cut demarcation between the executive and legislature. Most of the time, the laws passed by the legislature can easily be executed by the executive, because they know why they made this law and how it can be implemented. That is one of the advantages. Parliamentary systems are more flexible in the sense that they impel an elected representative who have different political views to negotiate, compromise in order to form the government. So there is a lot of discussions. For example, the latest Waqf Act, they have a lot of discussions and debates going on in Parliament before they are passing a law. So there is a good form of democracy. Okay. The parliamentary systems are more flexible in the sense that they impel elected representative with the political. I already told you. This is a repeat slide. So, what are the disadvantages of parliamentary form of government? Parliamentary systems tend to create problem of executive domination, because even though I have told you there is a cooperation between executive and legislative, because ultimately the laws are being implemented by the executive. So always the more power rests in the executive, then executive domination will always be there. This actually happens in a single party majority, where the parliamentary government with the executive enjoys so much control over the legislature that the later serves as a mere talking shop, because the legislative becomes very very nominal in the term, and the executive gains more control over the government and the power. Parliamentary systems are associated with a weak government and political. They're always in politics, because there are always discussion, indifferences, fights is going on. So the chance of political instability is a little bit higher in parliamentary system than the presidential system. This usually exists in the coalition government. We have seen Gujarat government, lot of coalition government where the parliamentary system had lot of weaknesses. Parliamentary systems are far less efficient than the presidential system, in the sense that voters do know the advance what the composition of new government might be, and which depends on final electoral results and the subsequent elections for forming a coalition government. The biggest disadvantage, as I told you, is the coalition government, where no party wins single majority. There will be separate parties owning their power. So there is a chance of high corruption. There is a chance of high dissociation between the different parties, and their personal motives can be the ultimate thing. The national identity can be lost. That is one of the biggest disadvantage of parliamentary system of government. In a situation where no party wins a majority of the legislative decisions, the preferred policies of the voters may not be actualized, as the parties holding different political have to compromise. For example, the Congress, the second UPA government, had to give the certain portfolios to DMK to stay in power. So DMK, what they did was, they did lot of corruption because they have power. So these kind of negotiations are made just because they don't have single majority in the parliament. Now, coming to the presidential form of, the best example for the presidential form of government in the United States, you know very well. The presidential system is a form of government in which executive and legislative branches of the government are separate and there is mutual independence. So there is a clear-cut difference between executive and legislative branches, and separate, and there is mutual independence between the two systems. The executive legislatures are elected separately and have independent, not like in India or in the parliamentary form of government where they are having a overlap in the parliament, the executive and the legislature. And coming to the features of the presidential form of government, there is only a single head. As in parliamentary, there are two heads in the government. The separation of powers is very exact in the presidential form of government. President and cabinet ministers, the president, president selects its own cabinet ministers, not like in the parliamentary form, where only the elected members of the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha or in the parliament, they can be the part of the cabinet council. There is a lawmaking authority. Lawmaking authority is different. Lawmaking authority is separate from the president, and there is a fixed term office. For the president, unless and until he is not impeached. Okay. And coming to advantages of presidential form, the biggest advantage of presidential form is separation of power. There is clear cut. You cannot overlap the powers. The legislative is different, the executive is different, the president itself is different. Unlike the parliamentary system, under which each party is likely to represent only its own sympathizers, the president is a presidential system and a single so more power is vested on the president. He can elect his own cabinet members. He is single-handedly. That is the what we are seeing about what we are seeing about Donald Trump. President Donald Trump, he is acting as the world president because he has unlimited power, and he can be also limited by the parliament in a certain way. I will tell you about that later. Okay. Because of the fixed terms, the presidential systems provide greater continuity in the executive, ensure far more political stability than the parliament. As I told you, it can be hung parliament or coalition government. It can be very unstable, and some people pull off their support. The government will go again. Elections will happen. So it's kind of unstable if there is no single party having a dominant majority. And in presidential system, the voter is likely to have information in advance about who will lead the new government. That is a disadvantage or maybe an advantage. The presidential systems provide voters more opportunities to influence and shape the policy making process, in that they are represented in two separately and independently elected institutions. The legislature and executive are two separately elected institutions. So voters have more options to select how they are governed in presidential system. Disadvantage of the presidential form of government are deadlock. This deadlock between the president, the executive, legislative, and the Congress in terms of when we talk about United States. Always president will say one thing, the legislative can say one thing, the executive can. There is all kind of deadlock. Very rigid system. There cannot be any consensus unless and until the law is very rigid. Accountability is no one will own the accountability, but in parliamentary form of government, the accountability is shared, the collective responsibility is there, and a weak cabinet, because the president himself selects the cabinet. The cabinet don't have ultimate power. Everything is ultimately decided by the president. President has enormous power. The United States president, or the presidents of the presidential system, is having a high amount of power than a prime minister of a parliamentary form of government. So for this, I like to end this session on this note. Hope you understood the basic concepts about lot of things, the advantages. We have covered a lot of ground in this session. So I would like to subscribe this channel, like this channel, comment this channel, and let me know your feedback. Thank you for your time.